Gianni Agnelli was a controversial personality. However, no one can claim he didn't truly understand how money worked. So in this video, we'll explore the life of the Añielli family, an Italian old money family, and reveal how they used their family fortune to build an empire that will continue to be remembered for the next decades. Gianni Agnelli was born in Turin on March 12, 1921, the son of Edoardo Añielli and Virginia Bourbon del Monte. He received his name from his grandfather, Senator Giovanni Agnelli, founder of the Fiat Spey automobile company. As the eldest son of 7 children, Agnelli grew up in an environment of wealth and elevated tastes. Even if all Agnelli's children were expected to be well-behaved, he was the naughtiest of the family. Despite this, Gianni knew he was destined for greatness. Thanks to his family's money and powerful connections, he had all the tools to turn the Agnelli into the new Italian royal family. Unfortunately, not even all the money in the world could not prevent his father from suffering a tragic accident. When he was 14, Gianni discovered that his father had died in a horrific plane crash. That tragic family event would begin a legacy of bizarre tragedies. Soon after, Agnelli was raised by his grandfather and became the prince destined to inherit the family throne. For this reason, Gianni Agnelli was instilled with the skills and tools necessary to become a leader in the industry. He learned how to negotiate from an early age and how to behave in front of others. But not everything he knew he learned through his education. Gianni had a natural charisma and magnetism, which served him well as a playboy and businessman. He later studied at the Pinerolo Cavalry Academy and was greatly influenced by his early trips to the United States. Agnelli was fascinated by the modern landscape of the country, which seemed to be years ahead of Italy. He came to be inspired by the chaotic, fast-paced city of New York and admired Detroit for its industrial might. Even as a teenager, the young heir wanted to help his family prosper. Unfortunately, the war meant Gianni Agnelli had to postpone his plans to fight for his country. Gianni was just 18 years old when the war began. He was on his way to take a job at Fiat when he changed his mind and decided to fight for his homeland. Despite his grandfather's insistence that he stay in Italy and work at Fiat to not risk his life, Agnelli was as stubborn as a mule. The same patriotic loyalty that made Italy prosper led him to fight to defend it. That's why in 1941, he joined the war. According to a reporter at the time, Agnelli fought as a lieutenant in Russia and North Africa before being wounded and pulled out of combat. Not content with this, he rejoined the army after Italy's surrender to help drive the Germans out of his country. One of the great advantages Agnelli possessed was that he was fluent in English. This was a great help to him in communicating with his American allies and expanding his family's business. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first, let's see how far back the origins of the family's wealth go. Many entrepreneurs have had to work their way up from nothing to become millionaires, but that is not the case with the Agnelli family. Gianni's grandfather was born in 1866 into a wealthy landowning family and trained as an officer at the military academy in Modena before becoming a cavalry lieutenant. Captivated by the advent of automobiles, he founded with several partners in 1899 the Fabbrica Italiana di Automobili Torino, which would later be known as Fiat. Gianni's grandfather benefited greatly from the Italian-Turkish War of 1911 and the First World War between 1914 and 1918. During those times, the Agnellis supported Italy by supplying as much equipment as possible, such as trucks, machine guns, aircraft engines, and ambulances. This way, the company grew from 50 employees in its early years to more than 10,000 by 1915. Soon, the Agnelli family needed a new factory to manufacture the impressive quantities of military equipment needed by the Italian army. This was to be the Lingotto factory that opened in 1922 in the southern suburbs of Turin. From the beginning, the company imitated Henry Ford's production model, incorporating concepts such as mechanization, chain production, and division of labor. After that, Fiat expanded further with the Mirafiori factory, located on the outskirts of Turin. The larger factory was designed in 1936 and completed in 1939 on the eve of World War II. Soon, the Agnelli family would become a central cog in the Italian economy and be remembered for their political involvement. One day, Gianni's grandfather got to know Benito Mussolini and decided to finance his political party. That is why when companies such as Fiat suffered strong attacks for their excessive profits during the war, Mussolini showed his gratitude by wiping the slate clean. Since the 1920s, The Agnellis have invested in multiple businesses. First, they acquired one of Italy's leading newspapers called La Stampa. 6 years later, they became its sole shareholders. The family also invested in tractors, railroads, ships, and airplanes. If something was for sale, the Agnelli could buy it. In those years, they obtained ownership of the Juventus soccer club and created a bank to allow customers to buy their cars on credit. To manage this entire empire, the Agnellis founded the holding company IFI, now known as Exor, in 1927. However, the family's most lucrative business was undoubtedly military equipment. Thanks to their connections with the fascist party, they were able to win the majority of government and military tenders and became an Italian superpower. When Fiat's founder died in 1945, Gianni inherited an economic empire full of political connections. But since he and his brother Umberto were too young to run a company of this magnitude, they had to leave the company in charge of Fiat's CEO, Vittorio Valletta. The Valletta era was particularly hard on the company's employees. Fiat's new president had no qualms about firing those workers accused of being communist sympathizers. While Gianni was enjoying the family fortune at 24, his family's influence kept growing. Soon, the Agnelli family began participating in important international conferences that brought together select committees of the world's economic and political elite. Among these, they took part in the Bilderberg and Trilateral Commission meetings. Gianni gradually entered Fiat's circles of power and was elected mayor of Villar Perosa in 1946. By 1959, he was president of IFI. 4 years later, he took over the management of Fiat for 3 years until he became president of the company. In 1957, Gianni attended a Bilderberg meeting for the first time. 6 years later, he became a member of its steering committee. In the years following the war, the Agnelli family expanded its control over the Italian economy and industrial sector through its main company, Fiat. They founded Iveco to deal with the production of heavy vehicles and Texid to manufacture steel for Fiat, and created a company specializing in robotics and automated systems called Comau. This made Fiat grow by leaps and bounds. Not satisfied with this, the Agnellis partnered with Enrico Cuccia, president of Mediobanca, a semi-public bank and a very important figure in the history of Italian capitalism. Cuccia ended up becoming the family's advisor and helped them in 1986 to acquire Alfa Romeo for a lower price than that offered by Ford. In this way, Italy became a country ruled by a handful of closed clans, and the Agnelli family was the most powerful of them all. One of the most important moments in the history of the Agnelli family took place in 1977 when the legendary Gianni Agnelli helped save Ferrari from bankruptcy. Agnelli was a great fan of their cars, so after learning of Enzo Ferrari's death, he became its main shareholder, getting the company back on track and making it a synonym of excellence and Italian style. However, Gianni was much more than a respected businessman. He was a father, mentor, and playboy who lived his life to the best of his abilities. He surrounded himself with the most beautiful women on the planet and married Princess Morella Caracciolo di Castagneto. Despite his parents dying in accidents, he defied the gods by living and driving at the limit, and survived dozens of serious accidents both on the road, on the slopes, and at sea, until death knocked on his door. When he died, his personal fortune equaled about $2 billion. Many people remember Gianni as much for his romantic exploits as for his excellent fashion style. From his distinct way of speaking to his habit of wearing his watch over his shirt cuff, he became a role model for an entire generation. He was rich, famous, and charismatic, had a dream home, and was close friends with John F. Kennedy, Truman Capote, and Henry Kissinger. Everyone wanted to be with Gianni Agnelli. Let's talk now about today's family legacy. Today, the Agnellis are known as the uncrowned kings of Italy. After Gianni died in 2003, his grandson John Elkann took over the reins of the empire. John appointed Sergio Marchionne, the man responsible for saving Fiat from the danger of bankruptcy, and helped it merge with Chrysler and become one of the largest automakers in the world, a merger that Gianni Agnelli had tried unsuccessfully to achieve in 1987. Today, the entrepreneur has the challenge of keeping alive a company founded in 1899 without losing its Italian roots as it continues to expand throughout the world. With that said, who do you think will be the next successor to the Agnelli empire? And what would you have asked Gianni if he had been your mentor? I'll be reading you in the comments.